Welcome to the Rahway All Day podcast, where the stories, people, and moments that define Rahway come to life. Hosted by Mayor Raymond Giacobbe, this show takes a closer look at the history, culture, and future of the city. Each episode features in-depth conversations with the individuals shaping Rahway's path forward. Whether you've lived here all your life, are new to the community, or just want to learn more, this is the place for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
And I'm always a believer in, having conversations and really kind of picking the brain of individuals that came before you. You're an individual who I hold in high regard. Mayor Bolich over in Elizabeth is another mayor who I hold in high regard. Individuals who have, been there, done that, as I like to say, got the T-shirt. Bolich is still wearing his, but at the end of the day, you learn from these individuals because there's nothing like life experience. You can't learn what life teaches you in a textbook. So I remember early on, you told me about the importance of open space. And one of the early decisions that I was faced with was on Cherry Street, right where the old New Era building was. It was then. The city owned it for a little bit. We eventually took it down. Now, obviously, there was a developer that was interested in developing and putting like 20-something, 30-something units. And, I really sat back and I looked at the landscape of Cherry Street, and I go, there's not going to be inviting if you're walking down the street and there's just buildings, on your left and your right. Like, there has to be an area where you're walking down the street, and then here's this beautiful open space that we can conjugate. We were able to put a beautiful mural that represents our city and the Rahway River and the wildlife within that river. So, we're utilizing that open space to also, have a avenue for artists to be able to come and express themselves. And, having those conversations with you early on made me realize that, open space is important. And when I was faced with the decision of, like I said, throwing up a 30-unit building or keeping it as open space, even though you don't receive tax revenues off parks, but it's invaluable what it provides to the community.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just an example of those coffee conversations, as I like to say. You take it and you process it, and you never know when you're able to use it later on. So.
Well, you wonder what, every generation puts a hero on the pop chart was one of the rock tune lyrics that I always got a kick out of. But, you wonder, how it all evolves, and economics do prevail. And, they have found, an easier way. Not everybody. Branding changed the game.
Yes.
When you buy a certain brand, the quality of it. Where before the branding came out, you had to go touch, see, and feel. And you don't have to do any of that. So you have to. These are things that they're evolutionary in many ways, but they have consequences. They change the dynamic of who we are.
Yeah.
And we always said that about the downtown. The future of these downtowns, in most cases, are eateries and things like that, places.
Because that's what people are visiting. To
go.
your point, it's in the mail now.
I mean, even the nature of the theater in 1929, when the theater was built, not everybody had a television. So this was the big newsreel. This is how people got their information and became in tune to different things. Now it's like, I was watching a guy on the way over here. He's sitting there. I thought he was talking to himself. He's talking to his phone, or his not his phone, his watch. And then
you ever seen it? It's like the old Dick Tracy cartoons. You never thought that was actually going to happen.
But I didn't realize that the way he was sitting and his wrist was. I thought he's talking to himself. I said, "This guy lost his mind." I stayed around a little bit because I thought maybe he needed help, and then I realized, he's talking to his watch.
That happens to me when people have the earbuds in. You see him talking to himself. You're like, "Is he talking to me?"
But it's a different dynamic now.
Absolutely, and you touched on it before. You have to be. You have to be fluid when you're in especially municipal and local politics because times are ever changing. I remember growing up and my grandfather having real estate properties in and around our downtown, and going to the different shops, like the Hallmark shop, and you had all these little, you had the Anthony's Bike Shop and Cliff Hardware, and you had all these shops and services that now were either taken out by bigger conglomerates like your Home Depot and your Lowe's, so you don't see really too many local hardware stores, or it's online. Like you go to buy my wife goes online and grabs the Hallmark cards, like the stack for the year, for the birthdays and everything. And so we have cards for the different occasions. If I'm buying a shirt, I pretty much know, if I know my size in that brand, I'm going to go online and purchase it because it's easier just to be delivered. So you saw the transition from the downtown local stores to the mega malls, your Woodbridge Mall, your Menlo Mall, and now you look at Woodbridge Mall and Menlo Mall, and they're struggling, and because everything now is either Amazon or some other online purchase. So you have to be able to be fluid and keep up with the times and understand the dynamics of the economy and understands the dynamic of what the way things are shifting. So as a municipality, you can adjust accordingly. You were mayor of our great city from 1991 to 2010, 20 years, as you said. You had so many different successes. You provided a lot of infrastructure and a lot of different things here in the city that, at the time, I'm sure were tough to convince the public, but you did it because you knew it was the best thing for Rahway. And now as an assemblyman, you're at the state level advocating for, people in your district, Rahway being one of them. And I still see that you still have the same onus on the arts, environment, and so forth that you did as mayor, and you kind of carried that over, to the State House. So
well, I didn't carry it over as much as I got there, and I guess they look at what you're about, and next thing I know, I was chairing.
Yeah, be on this committee, be on that committee, chair this.
Transportation, the arts and entertainment, that kind of thing. It was kind of sort of what you did. It was interesting. It was, being mayor over the course of 20 years, I think there were a lot of the changes. I try sometimes to think of like, what's next,
Yeah.
But you even take the concept of waste energy, which was, that was one of those dynamics that was approved before I became mayor, but I got the wrath of it when I was first running. But when you think about it, the garbage costs were getting so high, and the amount of truck traffic running, and you think about where you're taking your garbage. It was going closer to Pittsburgh. As time went on, it was going to Pennsylvania, then farther in Pennsylvania because. All
to the cost of the taxpayer.
Yeah, and these places, these old farms weren't producing the same way, so these guys took the money and put all the stuff on their property, and then people got annoyed, and then it went farther and farther. But we're a consumer, nation, and unlike any other on the face of the earth, and. It has to go someplace, so it's kind of interesting to watch it.
Yeah, the Cavanta, well, actually they're a new name now. The incinerator where we bring our waste. I remember that being very controversial, but as mayor now, we receive millions of dollars for for tipping fees. So.
Right.
And I remember you saying to me when we discussed it, they were gonna, if it wasn't in Rahway, they're gonna put it a half mile down.
Right, it would have been on the major transportation line, Route 1.
Yeah, so it would have been a half a mile down 22. Probably in Linden, and at the end of the day,
they would have been getting the money.
And
Linden had Exxon and all those big corporations that they didn't really need the tax revenues that.
I know that it's highly regulated. I know that we make, myself, my administrations make sure that we hold. Them accountable for their actions, and they've been a good corporate partner and to the neighboring towns and to the city as a whole. So, that was a prime example of something at the time that you got a lot of pushback for, but ultimately it became a benefit to our city, and it really helps us when it comes to stabilizing our taxes and getting rid of our waste. So when you retired in 2010 from mayor, and you took a little break, and then you became an assemblyman. What made you want to get back into politics? They made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
I lost my mind, I guess. I don't know. Actually, I was in from 1990 to 2010.
That's right, 90.
So
yes.
you know, it always says 91, but I don't get it. I don't know. My first year didn't count, I guess. But I was there from 1990 to 2010. No, it was something that always interested me. Growing up, my next door neighbor ran for council. He used to stand on the corner of Scott Avenue and Church Street and wave at every car that went past. I never forget it. And John Marsh was up the street, so it was kind of an active political area.
Our last Republican mayor, John Marsh.
John Marsh, yeah. And he was a few blocks away. So there were a lot of people that were engaging in it. And then, it really was when I was on the Y board that, we started to watch it. And as a downtown merchant, it was kind of funny. Life, you show up is really what it's about.
Yeah.
And so, I was working in the jewelry store, and then all these guys would come in, all the merchants, and complaining about the world. But the world was changing. The malls had opened, and it's all a matter of time and place. What's going on, and so I think it was kind of an interesting time because it was so transitional. There was so much going on, and I don't really know what could change the paradigm at this point. I think we pretty much arrived. How much faster do you need product, or anything of that sort? So these downtowns have to be, 10% of the town lives in the central business district. There's 3,000 people that are in the buildings down there. And even with that direct impact on it, these businesses, as you have traditional old school retail, storefronts, it's not nearly as important. Some towns, more affluent towns, you take the Summits of the world.
And even they're struggling too.
And they are struggling. They're having the same problems. It just, the dressing looks better than the reality of the stores. And a lot of these major chains will give partial credits to the retailers, that name brands that are, people from their area are using the mail, but
but they're just keeping
they
that
give them a discounted product.
And they're keeping it out there almost as like a way of keeping the brand relevant and people seeing it, active on street corners. Yeah.
Right. And there's still people that just like to go touch and feel.
Yeah. Listen, if I'm shopping for a suit, I'm definitely going to look at the suit, try it on, get measured. But if I'm buying a pair of Nikes, which I know I'm a size 12, I'm calling up Amazon every day, just getting them delivered because I know what I like, I know what how they're going to fit on me, and so forth.
You get my age, you don't need sneakers anymore. You can't run anyway.
The owner and founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos. He was being interviewed, and he goes, "I don't run my company for today. I run my company for 5-10 years into the future. We don't look at today. We look at what does Amazon look like 5 years from now? What does Amazon look like 10 years from now?" And that really resonated with me because I try to personally use the same approach when it comes to our economic development and our redevelopment efforts. It's not what does the city look like now? What is the city going to look like in 5 years or 10 years? And are we doing things to make sure that we're going to be either with the curve or ahead of the curve, and not fall behind, like
right.
a lot of municipalities do, not having that forward thinking approach. And I try to take that CEO approach to our economic development because at the end of the day, that's really what it's based on.
I mean, even in the downtowns, when you think about it, like typical buildings that I used to own on Cherry Street, the owner of the building, kind of exists because of the apartments upstairs. That's 2/3 of the income that comes in.
So I had an interesting stat. The average household income in Rahway is roughly $80,000 per household. In the 3,000 units that you just mentioned, it's $115,000. With out of those 3,000 units, less than 100 kids going to the Rahway school system. So that tells me that these apartments are occupied by young professionals making a six-figure salary that most likely don't have children and therefore have disposable income. So that's why I think that we're seeing the success that we see in and around our downtown, even in the city as a whole, with our businesses, especially our service businesses. Because listen, we all know the younger generation, especially when they're making money, they don't have time to sit home and cook. Like they're usually grabbing the things to go. They're the ones taking their friends out and their significant others out to eat during the week and so forth. So and I love to hear and I love to see individuals that come experience Rahway as a renter and then decide to settle down and raise their family here. I've heard numerous stories of individuals over the last several years that was their path, and that as mayor, that makes me happier than ever, because that is the true goal of the redevelopment efforts. It's not just to get them in here as a bedroom, but to have them truly embrace and become a part of our community, and it's happening.
Right. No, it's even property values are an interesting thing. You take the house. I mean, I paid like $40-some thousand for my house on Elm Avenue when I bought it. I know it needed to be renovated at the time.
That wouldn't even cover a down payment on a home in Rahway right now.
It was built in 1898, but it's a very stable community. You don't see a lot of houses staying on the market for a very long time. No. When they do come up for sale.
Yeah.
And
no, it's a desired community. Absolutely. Yeah. My wife Laura, being a realtor, I know that just as many years as a few 3 or 4, there was over 200 houses for sale in Rahway, and now there is less than, I believe, 30 on the market. Probably less than that now. That was a couple months ago when I was talking to her about
and you see the numbers that they're bringing are just,
I
always say it to my wife. I says, oh, look at it, what it's worth. We should sell it now.
There where you going, all
right? I could live in one of those buildings. But, she'll tell me Sean was born here, my son. And I said, go give it to him,
Yeah, listen, so it's...
but it's not happening.
That is Jeff,
I'll be
Jim,
buried there,
Jim,
in the backyard.
That's a great segue into the next question I wanted to well, not even a question, just kind of the next topic of conversation. So I mentioned earlier a lot of our similarities. You and I are both Rahway High School graduates. We grew up, we grew up here in the city of Rahway. We currently still live here in the city of Rahway. We took untraditional paths to becoming mayor of the city of Rahway. We're both married to our high school sweethearts, Lori Kennedy and Laura Giacobbe. And we both suffered a tragedy with the loss of a child. And we both still live in the home to this day that we raised our children in. And the conversation that you just explained that you had with Lori, as far as me and Laura literally had that not too long ago. And I said, well, with the home values, those apartments downtown, she goes, we're never selling this home. We're giving it to Raymond. And, listen, I get it, because there is a sentimental attachment to the home you raised your children in. And,
the difference between men and women.
Yeah, yeah, they are way smarter than we are, and they are way more emotionally connected than we are. But I do have to say though that what early on when my wife and I were deciding where we wanted to settle down and raise our family, I wasn't in politics yet. This was probably mid-2000s, and she's from Linden, and I told her I want to stay in Rahway, and I want to stay in the area where I grew up, because I just felt like Rahway provided me with so many opportunities in so many different ways that while I was growing up, I didn't realize it. I had the opportunity to see gentlemen like yourself, or Tony Garay, Carlos Garay, Louis Garay, the Garay family, and what they've done for the city of Rahway. The Martin family, they're still here. The Cole family. I mean, you see these families that are literally here for generations upon generations, and that doesn't happen by accident. Something keeps us here. It's not like we're like, oh, this place stinks. Let me stay here longer. So I guess it's not really a question, but do you have any idea of what it is that just keeps guys like us here for our entire lives and generations after that?
Yeah, I have no idea. There's 7 kids in our family, and none of them live here but me.
Oh, there you go.
There's something wrong with us,
I have a brother, Joe, who lives down in Freehold now. He's still Rahway all day, of course. Yeah. But yeah, it's just the community that I want to have make sure my kids had the same experience.
I get a kick out of it, because when my brothers and sisters do come back and visit, they always say, "Oh, this is really nice," or they'll tell me something that Rahway has that their town doesn't, and I think, "Well, what the hell you move for?" You know?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rahway right now, you spoke on it a little bit before of how branding is important. And a big part of this Rahway All Day podcast is I want individuals who are from Rahway to be able to listen and enjoy and know where, understand the stories from the past and, where we currently are and where we're headed. But it's also, too, to brand the city of Rahway because, I feel, quick story, when I first had my first fundraiser as mayor of the city of Rahway, I had it at the Irvin Inn Social. Very nice place. I invited people.
Thank you. I restored that
yes,
building.
you did. That was formerly your place. And I had friends and business associates from out of Rahway come to the fundraiser to support me as a friend and as a associate. And they did not realize how far Rahway had come. And some of them still had the vision of the pipe shop and the Cliff Hardwares, and not to say those are bad businesses, but they did not realize that all that Rahway has accomplished and all they have to offer. And that was like a light bulb went off my head. And I'm like, how many other individuals really don't know all the special things we're doing here in the city? And how do we get that out to not just the people in Rahway, but in the surrounding neighborhoods and throughout the state? And it's a effort that is, continuously changing. But to your point, branding the city and having the city of Rahway known as a city of the arts, a city of, transit, a city of redevelopment is really something to me that is satisfying, and we got to continue to make sure that is what's being perceived in our great city.
Right. Well, it was funny when I was the mayor. People would, matter of fact, I took a 4-month motorcycle trip on my, cross country, and I remember being in Montana, and somebody said, "Oh, you're from New Jersey?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Where are you from?" They said, "Rahway," and they said, "Oh, that's where the prison is." So it was like. I've told people this a million times. The prison never was in Rahway.
Nope, it's on Rahway Ave and Avenel.
It's not even in Union County.
No,
it's in Middlesex County.
In Woodbridge Township.
I said, so people would say, "Well, why was it called that?" I said, "Because we were one of 7 post offices in the whole coast there, and it was the mailing address, So we used to get the mail from Middlesex County and all over the place. So that's how it came about." But
I was in San Diego one time, and my good friend Antonio Garay played for the Chargers for a period of time, and we were out there. We were talking to some. My wife and I were out there viewing the game. We were talking to some other couple, and they go, "Where are you guys from?" I'm like, "New Jersey." "What part of Jersey?" "We grew up there." Like, "Rahway." Like, "Oh, by the prison?" And I said the same thing. "Well, the prison was never in Rahway." You say the whole spiel, but I
nobody gets the message.
I contribute that to Scared Straight program. I remember it was towards the end of my school career, but for many people, they grew up seeing the Scared Straight video that they played in schools throughout the country, and the video started off live from Rahway Prison, and it's like, hey,
you don't hear too much of that anymore.
No, but generationally, it's kind of fading out. I think my generation was probably the last generation that even really saw that video.
There's people out there wondering, what the hell are you talking about?
Some of the younger viewers are like, Scared Straight, what is going on?
No, it's interesting. It is interesting. No, it's a great place to raise your family, and it's I always would get a kick out of the class reunions. People come back and they almost seem jealous that they all great memories. Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's a wonderful place.
So recently we lost a great man here in the city of Rahway, our former chief, Chief Henderson, and at his funeral, his son Ed got up and spoke. And he told a story that I heard a different version of, but I'm sure the version that you tell is going to be the truth. But tell us a little bit about when you first became mayor and your encounter with our police chief at the time at a local pub, and kind of take us through that, because I love it. I find it fascinating, just that you gentlemen could still continue to work and really do great things for the city afterwards. It really speaks to the character of both you gentlemen. It's a great story.
It
so
was
please,
a funny night.
Please
It was after a meeting that we had, and everybody was going to a local watering hole, and so I was invited, and I went over there, and I walked in, I sat down, the chief, rest his soul, who, by the way, we became great friends. He, he was a big supporter of the mayor who was there for 20 years before me, and there was change, and people were all upset because it's it's like a football game when you're running for office. It's us against them.
It's a blood sport.
And so there were a lot of emotions running high, and so I was sitting there, and he was sitting across from me, and all of a sudden. And I guess I just walked in, and he had been there for a while, and I remember his buddy Vic the barber, they called him, because he was a barber. Everybody had a nickname, and the chair squeaked back, and he was getting off the stool, and the whole place was looking over, and he walked over to me, and the irony of it was there was a fellow who was the bartender at the time. His name was Tony Orlando, and he was from Linden, and he was a boxing referee.
Yes, I know exactly. You're saying these names, and it's just bringing back memories of my childhood.
Tony was the Golden Gloves.
Yeah,
he did some pro fights too, and so all of a sudden there was like a 3-second incident that swung around and. I came off the stool, and in the way I came off, he was behind me, and he hit the wall, and I had my thumb by his neck, and he didn't know what was coming, and so in all fairness, I just walked in, and he was there for a few hours, so
you had a little bit of edge on him.
At the edge, so Tony Orlando said, I got my money on the mayor. He's got a great stance, And I kind of broke the ice.
That's great.
And I looked around and I said, I've killed men for less than this.
Yeah. I think of now.
Everybody laughed. And
of course. And listen.
This is pre-cell phone.
And it was a different time back then. Of course, I can only imagine now something like that happened with the era of social media and how we spun. But,
you'd be pronounced dead before you got home.
Seriously. But it speaks to the character of you and the former chief that you guys had that little scuffle.
He was a good man.
Yeah, and you guys had that little scuffle, and then you continued to work together as mayor and chief. It was, like I said, it's a true testament to your character. And you mentioned boxing stance, and I'm gonna, we're definitely running out of time. I can see my staff kind of giving me the eyes, but I really want to talk about your relationship in the boxing world, and honestly, with one of the boxing legends, Mike Tyson, who you are a good friend with. I remember early on as mayor, you and my father teamed up with some different, promoting and bringing different boxing matches here to either the rec center or different places in Rahway. So just talk about your love of boxing, and I'm sure that the audience would be really interested in your relationship with Mike Tyson and how that
interesting.
transpired.
Actually, it goes back to an old Rahway family, the Schweitzers. Kevin Schweitzer, who started the Boxing Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Okay. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Kevin started with Emil Griffith. So Kevin, there was a guy from Rahway, Freddie Russo, who was a boxer, and Kevin knew all these guys. And Kevin really, the guy who really got involved with the Boxing Hall of Fame, he knew everything about it. And he was a small guy. He was about 123 pounds. I was 130 at the time, and so we had a boxing group, Bobby Duffy, and it was 167, and we walked around towns with gloves on, and Duffy would throw them at somebody and say, "Put them on," somebody you want to beat up or something.
Fight Club before Fight Club, right?
Yeah. This is how it is. So we'd go to Marty's up on St. George Avenue and Joe Perez's and all these different stores where people hung out, and that's what we did, But that's how I got to know it. And then years later, there's a place in Jersey City called Ringside.
Yeah.
Appropriately known by Mario Costa.
Yep.
And Mario
good man.
was cousin of Dina McGreevy, you know. And he owns Ringside, and Mike had an apartment upstairs. He lived there. He when he was training in New York,
I think his pigeon coop is still there to this day.
His coops are in the backyard. Mike is one of the leading authorities on pigeons in the country. Carrier pigeons, and they give them these truck drivers. They take the pigeons from Jersey out to Ohio, and they race them. They film it, they release them, and then they fly back to their coop. That's why they're called homing pigeons.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
so when they click back in the coop, the clock stops, and so there's big money on this stuff. You know?
I'm learning new things by the minute right now.
Yeah, so that's where the pigeon that's
Gotcha,
where the
okay.
pigeon stuff. Yeah, and so Mike and I became friends, and he wanted to get relicensed. He was offended that his license was taken away, so he came to me and he said, "I want to get my license back. What do I do?" You know, and Jim was the governor at the time, and I was telling him, and it was the last thing in the world he really, wanted to do. I mean, you talk about controversy, and he's like,
that was a different Mike Tyson back then.
I was the best man in his wedding, you know. So I had all the juice. So I told him this was important to me. It wasn't that he really wanted to fight or anything again. It was just a matter of, something was taken away from him,
That he feels was unjust.
And Mike used to say, it was sort of like it felt like slavery to him, I mean, he was impassioned by the whole thing. So we worked on it. We got him relicensed. He never fought again, nor did he want to fight again. But
just the principle
he got the paper back, and it was like, he didn't want to be left in the history books like, I lost my license.
Disgraced or defamed in a sense.
And by the way, he was such an interesting character. You talk about somebody who traditionally wasn't schooled, but historical things. I mean, he was a history buff.
Yeah.
He had dimensions of things that he was an expert on, like that people would not believe.
Yeah.
And he had a bit of a speech impediment, so people, that's where boxing came into his life.
Discounted him as unintelligent because of his speech impediment.
And he mastered the art of fighting.
I got a great story for you. A few years ago, was my wife and I's wedding anniversary, and I said, "Babe, I got you tickets to a Broadway show." She's like, "Oh, what was the show?" I go, "It's a surprise." She goes, "Oh no, you gotta tell me. Is it Cats? Is it Miss?" I started naming all these Broadway shows. Some of them I didn't even know the name of, and I go, "No, it's a surprise. We're gonna go out to dinner." So we go out to dinner in Manhattan. We pull up in the cab. We get out, and she looks up, and she's like, "Mike Tyson's Undisputed Truth." She goes, "You're kidding me, right?"
Yeah.
And I got this like death stare. Like, are you really taking me to something with Mike Tyson? And I go, "Babe, it's a one-man show." I go, "It's got great reviews." I go, I'm a Mike Tyson fan.
Yeah.
I go, "Just give it a shot." Yeah. And by the end of it, she walked out. I mean, he had you laughing.
Yeah.
He had you crying.
Yeah.
He had you. He just really captured the moment, and I was so impressed with how he was up there telling his life stories.
Yeah.
And who would have thought?
He was a lot brighter than people ever gave him.
Yeah. Who would have thought that Mike Tyson would be
it.
able to be up there and really captivate an audience and draw in an audience to where he was the only man on that stage, and he literally had you laugh. He told a great story. He goes, when he hit. Who was that fighter he got into the street fight with? The guy, Mitch Green.
Oh.
He goes, I hit Mitch Green.
Mitch Green.
Yeah, he goes, I hit Mitch Green so hard, I thought he was dead. He goes, this guy popped up like Frankenstein. He goes, I looked at my boy, I go, I'm going to have to kill this guy. and then he spoke about, obviously, the death of his daughter, and he got very emotional with that. Yeah. Honestly, who would have known that several years later I would be able to relate to that type of emotion.
Had something in common.
So it was definitely a really awesome show, and he showed a side of himself that I didn't know he had. And if we could ever get him here in Rahway, or maybe even on the podcast, that would be awesome. But definitely, Jim, listen, it was a truly an honor to sit here and get to talk to you. You are episode 1 of our Rahway All Day podcast, and the reason why that is because I felt it would be fun to have the former mayor who I had the opportunity to have these conversations with and know on a personal level and understand of the history of Rahway and kind of where we came from and all your trials and tribulations and the foundation that you provided for us. And I just wanted to really highlight that and let the people know that we're going to continue to put floors on that building, but it doesn't stop. It didn't stop with you. It won't stop with me. It's about the community. It's about the city, and it's Rahway all day.
Yeah,
so thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's great being back here at Hamilton Stage.
Absolutely. The Hamilton Stage, the Performing Arts Center that you built, sir, and thank you for that. Episode 1 of Rahway All Day is complete.
And that concludes our 2-part series with Assemblyman Kennedy. We hope you've enjoyed exploring Rahway's history and future vision. If you liked what you heard, please follow our podcast and leave a rating or review. It really helps others find our show. And don't forget to share. Coming next, we have our upcoming guest DJ Drewski, a radio personality and DJ at Hot 97, who has recently opened a studio right here in Rahway. You won't want to miss it.